So in the last chapter, what I've done is I've created an alpha map to be able to speed up the process of making all these stitches. So in this chapter, what we will do is we will go ahead and do the next step. And of course, the next step is for me to be able to do something like color in every single one of these stitches automatically as I sculpt these stitches. So let's go back into Photoshop. And we're back into Photoshop, and of course I've done some work ahead of time, but you know what, for the most part I'm just going to go ahead and just delete all this, and let's redo the color map. So basically what we have here is I have my alpha map that I've created in a past chapter, and now I'm going to want to create a texture map to automatically texture these these stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to very quickly select this tool here, the marquee select, the rectangle select rather. I'm going to select this portion inside. I'm going to go ahead and just press Control C. Then I will press create new layer and paste it in there. Okay, so we have that. We have this map on a new layer, and now I will paint bucket, and I will make sure that my color that I'm painting with is pure black, so all these have to be zeros. Click OK, and just click outside, and it'll paint both sides if you have continuous or contiguous off. If you have it on, it's only going to paint one side at a time. Okay, so we have something like this. And of course, we will also be using this as an alpha for a future, well, for this demonstration, but I'm actually going to be using this as an alpha and this as an alpha, and I'll show exactly what the difference is. Okay, so we have this, and now I need to color in these stitches with something other than just grays and whites. So let's create a new layer, and I'm going to switch up the color, and I'm going to color it using something like that. And once again, I'm going to be using paint bucket on this layer, so I'm just going to fill this layer with a color, but we don't want to necessarily want it to look like that. I'm going to change the blend mode of this layer to something like multiply, and of course now we get colors like that. So let's go ahead and just save this out, and I guess before I do that, I'm just going to flatten the image because I don't really want any layers to be stored in this image. It's just extra space that's being wasted on my hard drive, so I'm just going to save it as stitches 04 color. Okay, now I'm just going to undo that, and I'm going to save this as, actually first I'm going to once again go ahead and flatten this. I really don't want to have any layers flying around. Okay, so I'm going to save this as stitches 04. Okay, save it like that. Okay, and again, the reason why I did that is because I want to show you guys something. So close that. Now go into ZBrush, and within ZBrush, I'm going to first of all choose an alpha, and I'm going to first of all choose the alpha that I had previously, and I'm also going to import stitches 04 color, and here you go. So what will this give us? Well, before we do anything, we have to make sure that in our stroke for our brush, we have the roll function on. Roll distance has to be 1, and lazy mouse, I'm actually just going to increase this value of the lazy radius to something bigger. And we have our brush set up for the ability to be able to paint these stitches very quickly. So let's explore that a little bit. We have RGB and Z add on. That's perfect. And now let's go ahead and paint these stitches. Well, you've noticed that the coloring for the stitches is happening exactly as I want, but there's a little problem. There's also a nasty black border. Well, the reason why that's happening, of course, is because there is, in fact, white levels in this alpha map. So whatever is white above black is being painted on, and whatever is black is not being painted on. As you can see, everything that was black in this alpha map is not colored inside, but whatever is gray and above is, of course, being painted. Not what we want. One way to sort of minimize that is to go into alpha, make sure that we choose mid value of 50. So mid value is 50. And now when we paint, we'll notice that the stitches are being painted on, but at the same time, we still get some of that border in there. It's much more subtle, and it's better, but it's not exactly what we were looking for. Well, the reason why it appears like that is because, once again, now the mid value of 50%, what it's happening is 50% gray is what we have on these borders here. And that means that now ZBrush is interpreting 50% as black, and whatever is appearing more, or okay, basically 50% now is interpreted as black. Everything above 50% will be colored in. So these colors in here are, of course, above 50%. So they will be colored in, and of course, so will this. Well, the reason why it's appearing black is because the texture map that we have here is, of course, it has these black colors on outside of this texture. And the only part that's actually colored in also is, these white parts on these stitches. And of course, it's grabbing the color and applying it to that, and you end up having something like this. Now, there's a few ways to get around this. One of which is to go ahead and just switch up this alpha map and make it a little bit different. Or load in a texture map with some color outside of here that you could use outside of, like instead of black, you might have maybe some highlights across here. So you might want to just have in some, faded color. Of course, the other way is to just change the alpha altogether. So let's just go to alpha. And let's use the other alpha that I've loaded in, that I've created. I'm going to just choose stitches 4 as my alpha, as you can see right here. And now I'm going to paint, and as you can see, the stitches are the only part that's actually visible. So what we have to do now, or what we could do in this new workflow, what we could do is we could, of course, just turn off all the stitches altogether and try to paint something like this. Of course, right now I'm painting outwards towards me, so I want to paint inwards. And now I'm painting inwards, as you can see. And let me just choose a slightly higher intensity, so you can see a little bit more clearly that I am in fact cutting inwards. And now let me go back to my stitches 04 alpha and stitches 04 color. And let me just make sure that I switch back to add. And now I'm going to paint in my stitches. Of course, this is too small, so I'm just going to go ahead and just increase my brush size. And I'm going to fill in these stitches that way. So this is another way of working. And that pretty much covers that. I mean, basically you have two ways of working. I mean, one, you have the alpha map that you use for the automatic modeling of these stitches, or the second method, which you could completely disconnect the stitches from the modeling process, or basically you could just isolate the stitches altogether and just paint the path first and then paint the stitches afterwards, which of course gives you a nice variation in terms of basically the path and the stitches are being painted separately, so it makes it a little bit more organic. And you could define the path and just paint it up exactly as you like, and then place the stitches after that, or even place the stitches on another layer altogether. That's another possibility. So I think that's going to conclude it for that chapter, and I'm just going to undo all that because I really don't need it. And the next chapter, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the eye, which I'm going to use the document ZApp link, and I'm going to be using Photoshop to paint all the small details. Now I could use poly painting for painting all these details, but of course I've kind of beat the whole poly painting thing in far enough, where of course I was only using poly paints for the entire character so far. So let's do something a little different, and let's use Photoshop for the eye.